Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today I'm doing a preview for Dawn of Madness from Dimension Games. Dawn of Madness from Dimension Games is a horror narrative game which you're going to be taking control of various wanderers as you attempt to go through a central wanderer story and uncover one of multiple endings before possibly diving in with other wanderers or the various legacy elements you unlock with that central wanderer. This is a sponsored preview from Dimension Games. I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. This is not a prototype, nothing you see here is prototype, this is all final, but they are putting out a reprint as well as new content for the game. That said, I'm going to be walking you through the basics of both the general flavor of what this experience is like from a higher level, as well as going into a bit more depth with the actual turn sequences, the actions, all of that looks like if you're diving in to play this game. Dawn of Madness, like I said already, is going to be a horror-themed game. This is very much adult-focused as far as the actual theme behind everything or the actual stories you're going to be going through. And if you want to check out an excellent gameplay of this, I highly recommend checking out the gameplay series from Meet Me at the Table. He has a series of 4 games taking you through the full 8-hour journey of going through one of these very involved stories from start to finish all the way up to the epic finale, with some things redacted to try to retain the mystery, but if you really want to get a full sense of how this plays out, I highly recommend that as an excellent playthrough to watch. That said, when you're diving into this game, the higher level idea is you have your wanderers. You can control anywhere between 2 to 4 wanderers. If you're playing it true solo, you control 2 wanderers. There are various cards you're going to be adding to the game to balance things out, giving you extra actions if you are playing with fewer wanderers. But in general, whether playing solo or multiplayer, you have between 2 to 4 wanderers. That said, despite the wanderers in play, you're going to have one central wanderer every single time you play. That central wanderer is going to determine the entire book that you're playing through. All the various narrative text is going to come from that central wanderer story. Now, each central wanderer does have different endings to the story, but you're effectively choosing a single person to focus on their story, and everyone else is kind of diving into what their backstory is, how things play out. All of the narrative aspects are going to flow through that central wanderer, as well as the various components you're going through, as well as the various components you're using. To that end, you're going to be diving into, once you get done with initial setup, where you place out the world shards of those wanderers in a random area on this board, players are going to be taking actions in the game, and we'll dive into those a bit more in detail shortly, but players are going to be taking actions to try to resolve the story arc of what's going on. To a general degree, that's going to involve moving to various world shards in the game and initiating exploration actions on them to uncover the narrative story text, which is going to have players making various tests to try to, well, choices first of all. Players are going to make choices, but they're also going to resolve tests. And all of those things are going to culminate in various stories advancing on their arcs different degrees until eventually you are able to move these story arcs to a combined total of 40. What I mean by that is, for example, if C is at 2 and D is at 3, that's a combined total of 5 story points, and in order to proceed to the finale when you're playing Dawn of Madness, you're going to need to have 40 collective story points, as well as having taken out the main abomination. The game comes with 8 abominations from 2 core families being the kind of groupings of abominations you're playing against, and you're going to pick one abomination along with the various wanderers you're engaging with, and that's going to give you the characters that are in play. Once you've defeated that abomination, this guy over here right now at the moment, we have a frailty over here, but once you've defeated that abomination and collected 40 story points, and yes, these things can go all the way around, getting to above 10, once you have that, you'll be able to proceed to the finale, which is going to have one of several endings depending on the wanderer you're playing with, as well as giving you a shift as to what it is you're trying to do, each giving you the custom gameplay setups and adjustments you'll need to dive into those finales. Alternatively, you all die. That's another option over there. If all the wanderers are dead at once, or if any one wanderer dies for the 4th time, that will result in the players losing the game instead before they ever make their way to the finale. At that point, you will read different story outcomes depending on whether you did successfully kill the abomination or not. No matter what happens in Dawn of Madness, things are moving forward. There's some degree of progression. It's just a question of whether that progression is like the ideal outcome or less so, but also either your way, you'll be unlocking more content for that wanderer. Each wanderer comes with their own little envelope, giving them extra things that are going to be unlocked. The abominations do as well, as far as giving you something else that's going to be added to the game to mix up the experience, so that when you dive into it a second, a third, a fourth time, even if you're playing with the exact same wanderers and abominations, there is a degree of progression to how things developed, in addition, of course, to the fact that you can choose totally different stories and outcomes and pathways, resolve tests differently, have successes, failures, as well as the various horrors you're going to be facing off against, guaranteeing the players a completely unique experience every single time, even as you dive into the same stories. So that's kind of a general higher level overview of what this game is. Higher level overview, you're going through a story, you're taking actions to uncover text, you're moving forward the various story outcomes, you're defeating the main abomination, you're proceeding to the endgame finale, and then hopefully having as positive as an outcome as you can, all while learning more about the backstories of that central wanderer. Before, of course, diving into it again with other wanderers or that same wanderer if you've become a drop too attached. Not a good idea, by the way. With that said, what does this look like from a more mechanical perspective? What is it that you're doing on your individual turns? Well, you're going to have your individual wanderers. They're going to be randomly set up on the board unless the game tells you otherwise. So for example, Emily over here is going to start on a specific area if she is the central wanderer. But in general, you're going to have the abominations, the horrors, and the wanderers all set up on the board. You're going to be going through up to 10 rounds of play. That's another way you lose if you get to the end of round 10 and you have not moved to finale. But you have 10 rounds of play, and in each round, you're going to start by reading the event associated with that first text. You'll flip over here to 10 in your Central Wanderer's book and read that story text, which will give you a choice that you have to make to begin with. From there, players are going to be utilizing their mental capacity in order to take actions in the game. Mental capacity is tracked on this track over here on the sideboard, and players are going to be going from top to bottom taking actions. So whoever has the most mental capacity is going to spend that mental capacity to take an action, and then move their token down the amount that they spent. If Emily is at 7 and she spends 3, she'll go 1, 2, 3, moving it down to 4. And then the next turn, you're going to resolve the abomination, because whenever there's a tie, the enemies act first. So you're taking actions one by one, moving your tokens down as you take actions until eventually it gets back to that person's turn, and you can go ahead and Emily can take her next action. So you're slowly spending your mental capacity in each round on various actions, and once you get down to 0, once all players and enemies are down to 0, that's when you'll go through the refresh steps for the end of the turn and then proceed into round 2. You'll go through those 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way up to round 10, or until you've achieved the necessary goals to make your way into the finale. As far as the various actions you can take in the game, the most basic of which is going to start off with is moving. You can spend mental capacity in order to move. Spend as much mental capacity as you want in order to move as many spaces. So if he spends 2, he'll go 1, 2, moving along these lines to various areas on the board. You can also attack the various enemies. That's where these horrors, when horrors are spawned in the game, they're going to roll dice equal to the domain that they're in, equal to the world shard that they're in. Domains are a different card. So you look at the world shard, you'll roll those dice. So for example, if we, in this case, let's pretend we were over here and we had 2 reds and a blue. When you spawned the horror in that zone, you roll those dice and then put these specific markers onto that board. There are different colors as well as different symbols, and those are going to determine the weaknesses and the ways you can go ahead and attack them. To that end, if I'm trying to attack a horror, and again, attacking is one of the main actions in the game, you'll spend mental capacity equal to 2 plus the distance you are from that horror. So if I wanted to attack this horror over here, I'd be 1 away, so I'd spend 3, 2 plus 1 in order to attack that particular horror. When you do so, you're going to pick one of these to attack through, and then look at your wanderer's attributes. So for example, if I had 3 blue over here, then I can roll 3 blue dice, and I'm hoping to get these symbols over here. So I'm going to roll those dice, and I did not get any of those, but I did get this, and this one is wild. So I can count that towards 1, so that's going to be the wild symbol over here, so it counts for all. So I did 1 damage to this horror. Now there's a lot of mitigation in this game. We're not going to be going through everything over here, but there's a lot of ways to re-roll dice, to add dice to your roll, to cash in cards to get more of an attribute. So there's a lot of control. Your characters are going to start with various attributes of various colors based on rolling dice and assigning them. There's an additional action in the game where you can roll dice in order to generate more attributes that you can have in reserve, in addition to just generally testing your metal at any given point. So there's a lot of mitigation. But in that hypothetical, I did 1 damage to the horror, reducing his health from 4 down to 3. Not quite enough to kill him. Then again, I'm just trying to show you how this plays out. And again, there's a lot of tools at the Wanderer's disposals, as well as various items that will give you different bonuses in different ways. You might be able to do an additional damage every time you attacked a Wanderer, a horror in your zone. That's going to be the basic attack action. From there, you're going to have the confrontation action. Confrontation is how you attack the main bad guy in the game, so similar kind of idea, but the main abomination has their own separate deck instead. So you have a deck over here of cards that are slowly going to be going through from card to card, and in this case, you can spend those, you can test against those 3 over here. So in this case, my Wanderer will test all 3 of those attributes, hoping to get those results on them, and if I am able to achieve all of those, I'll deal the amount of damage in the bottom corner, that's going to be 2 in this case, to that abomination. You'll also get any rewards, in this case 0, and those can be spent and traded for various things as well. So that's going to be how you kind of attack an abomination. It's a similar concept, but instead of having the various weaknesses on the board itself, you're going to be looking at their deck of cards and testing it based off that. If you are successful, you're going to go ahead and go to the next cards, and then you have to deal with this next one, which is going to require me rolling red and getting those 3 results, which can be very hard, especially if you have low red. But again, examples wise over here, you can do things like cashing in one of your coda cards and getting the extra attributes on the bottom. This one will let me roll 3 extra red dice, but then I have to go ahead and just will no longer be able to use that going forward. It'll be a one-time thing, I mark it as used, and I can't benefit from that card anymore. That's going to be the confrontation action. I mentioned there's a way of getting extra results. That's going to be the domain action. You spend 1 mental capacity, and then you can go ahead and roll based on where your Wanderer is. So in this case, again, if we're using Emily, she can roll 2 purples and a red, and then she can generate those, adding them onto her personal sideboard. Look at that. That's 3 eyes over here, adding them all onto my personal sideboard, being able to save those in and cash those in for when I need them most. The next main action you can take is going to be the encounter action. That's going to be how players actually address the story itself, trying to move those story points forward in order to achieve those 40 collective story points, as well as, of course, actually engaging with the narrative of this game, which is a lot. To that end, if Emily over here is in the in-between, she can spend 2 of her mental capacity in order to go through that particular narrative. So we have 202 in the in-between, the parents consumed. With a heavy heart, you approach your parents in the explicit. Somehow, the room seems different than you remember. We'll then go to 202 in this book over here, find the particular story entry, and I'll read just a little bit, not too much over here. You stand in front of your family's home, looking up at its peak as its windows burn bright beneath an angry bruised sky. Rain flows with the tears on your cheeks, soaking through your hair and clothes. Regardless, you don't move, incapacitated by indecision. You desperately want to go in, but maybe it's better if you just turn and walk away. After all, this house may still be your family's home, but is it truly yours anymore? You see the shadows shifting between the trees and the side of the house. Perhaps it's just the wind ruffling the branches and bushes over there, or maybe it's the darkness in your soul closing in upon you. At last, you force your feet to move. You head inside the house, across the entryway, and into the family room. Your parents look up from where they clutch each other. Some deep part of you realizes there's something very wrong with the room, but all you can focus on right now is your parents' faces. Your mother's look is as unreadable as stone. However, your father's expression contorts, fresh shadows filling the angry trenches in his face. What are you doing here? He snaps at you. I only wanted, you stammer. Haven't you done enough, you ungrateful sow, your father yells, lunging to his feet. This is all your fault. She's never coming back, and it's because of you. You feel yourself crumpling inwards, your body trembling as you shatter inside. The walls are closing in around you, constricting. Your father is growing taller, towering above you. Fire leaps from his eyes and dances across his tongue. Go, he roars. Get out and never come back. I never want to see your face again. Then he shrinks, seeming to collapse in under his own weight. He covers his eyes with his arm. Decide if you really want to stay. If you do, test blue for eyes. So we're going to go ahead and look at Emily's attributes over here, which you're going to write down on the sheet as you start, but many things will modify these as you play. I have 2 in blue, so I'm going to roll 2 dice, testing for eyes, and I got that wild, which I can use for that eye over here. If you succeed, go to entry 342. If you fail, or if you just want to leave, proceed to entry 261. Now, I won't go further. I didn't even plan on reading reading that whole thing, but it is kind of fun to go through the stories. But that's the basic idea of the encounter actions. One of the main actions you'll be taking in the game, and that's going to help drive the story forward as you play, while also often resulting in story points being advanced and sometimes subtracted from these various styles, which will lead you towards those 40 points in the end game. Those are the main actions you're going to be taking. There are 3 more to go through. There's searching, where you can go ahead and spend to get a domain. You can get various domains that will help you out in the game. That's going to be from this deck over here. There's also trading with other players, and then there's existence actions, where you can spend currency to, again, get more benefits. So searching and existence are both going to give you more tools at your disposal, although searching is limited to once per round, and the existence is limited because you have to spend currency to be able to go ahead and get those cards. That's the basic arc of what your turns are going to look like. You're going to be trying to take actions using your mental activity over here in order to drive things forward, while also trying to stay on top of these enemies. Keeping in mind, by the way, that the horrors aren't just a physical threat to the game, because they often have, or I think I should say always have, various passive abilities that are going to hurt you until you deal them. So while they will be trying to chase you down and hurting you, they're also just going to hurt you through their very existence. Speaking of that, whenever you're taking action for a horror or an abomination, you're basically going to be looking at their sideboard and then choosing the first possible action that they're able to do. So they're going to have different costs over here representing the mental activity that they are spending on those actions as well. So you're going to look through it, and it's going to do things like, oh, if a wanderer is within one space of you, if a wanderer is in your domain, if X, if Y, there'll be certain actions they take, and sometimes those actions will cascade into each other. So it might be, if it's within 2, move towards it, and now if you're in its space, then spend again and take that action. So they have a pretty simple AI to follow, but one that's going to result in them slowly chasing you down and trying to hurt you more often than not. The Central Abomination is going to have a similar board and a similar structure. The main difference is that in their tree over here, there's often going to be a way to be able to look at their deck of cards and activate the top ability on their cards. So while you always know the bad thing that could happen once they do so, or once you attack it, there's going to be a new bad thing, so there's more variability to what they're doing, but still with the ability to see it and to plan around it. When this entire track down here goes all the way to the end, you're going to enter the refresh phase. When all characters have spent their mental activity, you're going to enter the refresh phase. We're going to check the Wanderer's winning conditions to see if you've won. That's to see if you have 40 on story points and if you've killed the Abomination. You'll respawn any dead Wanderers, because normally in this game when you die, you don't really die. Rather, you just you just spawn a worse version of yourself that you're now going to have to deal with as an enemy, and then you're going to just make sure you don't die for the 4th time. So you'll respawn any dead Wanderers as needed. You'll restore your mental capacity to their max for the various characters. You refresh any support cards, and then you resolve any devour cards. That's if you're playing with the devour mechanic. There are several things in this game that you won't dive into for the first time. Devour is recommended you play a few games before you introduce that mechanic, and then of course the legacy aspect to the various monsters as well as the Wanderers. That's all going to be things that develop as you go. You're going to repeat the cycle until you either lose or alternatively make your way to the finale. When you make your way to the finale, you'll go to the specific story ending. So for example, without getting too much into it, we have our little table of contents over here. There are 4 story endings for Emily, 4 finales you can go through. Each one will have its own little setup text, as well as what potential extra monsters you are facing off against, the things you're trying to do, and the adjustment to the game state. You're going to be flipping over all of the world shard cards to their opposing side. Different ones will have different options depending on the endings you're encountering with, which again gives you a near infinite amount of story text and ways this game can resolve as you play through it. That is basically Dawn of Madness. Dawn of Madness is a very long story-based game. Game sessions can range from 6 to 9 hours depending on your play group, yourself, how fast you're going. They are long encounters that are meant to be broken up over multiple sessions as you explore these characters' deep backstories that are going to have a degree of horror but also progression forward as you try to move your way towards various finales in this large story narrative arc of a game. You're going to be facing off against horrors as well as abominations along the way, all trying to get in the way while also providing you different challenges of an experience, different things you're going to have to face off against, and different ways to approach how you're trying to take things on. You're going to be rolling a lot of dice, both for attacking, for defense, for tests, but there is a lot of mitigation and control through the use of your cards, through the use of your domains, your existence cards, all the coda cards. All of those will give you a lot of ways to mitigate, as well as, of course, utilizing your player board and the default abilities of the various attributes from these icons. So there's a lot of mitigation to the experience, but but ultimately I think this is a game that can pull you in if you are looking for that horror narrative. There's a lot of mechanics to back up the experience, but primarily it's about that horror narrative. It's about exploring the individual backstories and trying to lean into the horror while making choices and enjoying everything that happens along the way. This has been a sponsored preview from Dimension Games. As I mentioned earlier, I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. And until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.